May 15, 1999. Madison Crawford stepped out of the gymnasium in her shimmering blue prom dress, telling her friends she needed fresh air. The last photo of her shows her laughing by the punch bowl at 10:47 p.m., tiara sparkling under the disco lights. By midnight, when they announced Prom Queen, her name echoed through an empty ballroom. 26 years later, a hiker found something impossible hanging from a tree branch deep in Millbrook Forest. Madison's prom dress, still pristine, still blue, swaying in the wind like she'd just taken it off. But that's not the strangest part. Pinned to the chest was a corsage that shouldn't exist. Fresh white roses that had been blooming for over 2 decades. Welcome to Lost Mystery Stories. Before we step into this haunting tale of a vanished prom queen, eternal flowers, and a forest that seems to remember everything, tell me in the comments, do you still have your prom photos, and what would you do if you found them somewhere they shouldn't be? If you believe stories like Madison's deserve to be told, hit subscribe because some nights never truly end. Madison Crawford had dreamed about prom since she was 12 years old. Not the dancing or the drama, she could take or leave all that. What she loved was the transformation, the way one perfect dress could make you feel like someone entirely new. The blue dress had cost her 3 months of weekend shifts at the local coffee shop, but it was worth every hour. Silk that shifted from deep navy to electric blue depending on the light, with tiny crystals sewn along the bodice that caught the gymnasium's disco ball like captured stars. "You look like a princess," her mother had said that afternoon, tears in her eyes as Madison descended the stairs in their small ranch house on Maple Street. "Mom, don't cry. You'll ruin your makeup before the photos." But Catherine Crawford couldn't help it. Her 17-year-old daughter looked radiant, auburn hair swept into an elegant updo, green eyes bright with excitement, that dress making her look older, more sophisticated than the girl who still kept a stuffed rabbit on her bedroom shelf. Madison's date, Kevin Torres, arrived at 6 p.m. sharp in his father's borrowed sedan, wearing a black tux that was only slightly too big for his lanky frame. They'd been dating for 8 months, and while it wasn't the passionate romance Madison sometimes dreamed about, Kevin was sweet, reliable, and he made her laugh. "Your corsage," he said nervously, fumbling with the plastic container. "I hope you like white roses." Madison held out her wrist, smiling as he carefully pinned the delicate flowers. "They're perfect." The photos in the Crawfords' front yard took 20 minutes. Every possible combination of Madison and Kevin, Madison with her parents, Kevin with Madison's parents, group shots with Kevin's family who had driven over from across town. Madison's father, Robert, a quiet man who worked at the paper mill, seemed almost overwhelmed by his daughter's beauty. "Have her home by 2 a.m., he told Kevin, his voice gruff with emotion. "Dad," Madison laughed, adjusting her tiara, a small crystal piece she'd bought at the mall. "The after-party doesn't even start until midnight." 1 a.m. then. And I mean it. They arrived at Millbrook High's gymnasium at 7:30, just as the dance was hitting its stride. The decorations committee had transformed the space with silver and gold streamers, hundreds of white lights, and a massive disco ball that cast dancing patterns across the walls. The theme was Enchanted Evening, and for once the reality lived up to the promise. Madison's best friend Sarah Chin rushed over the moment they walked in. "Oh my God, Maddie, you look incredible. That dress is everything." "You look amazing too," Madison replied, admiring Sarah's red gown. "Is Jake here yet?" "He's getting us punch. Speaking of which, you need to see the punch table." Mrs. Henderson went completely overboard. The gymnasium was packed with their graduating class. About 200 students total from Millbrook High's small student body. Madison recognized everyone, of course. In a town of just 3,000 people, you grew up knowing every face, every family story, every secret and scandal. She danced with Kevin to the slow songs, laughed with her friends during the fast ones, and felt for the first time in months, like everything in her life was exactly as it should be. Senior year had been stressful. College applications, SATs, her parents' financial worries about tuition. But tonight none of that mattered. At 10:30, Principal Morrison took the microphone to announce the prom king and queen nominees. Madison had been nominated, along with 4 other girls, but she didn't expect to win. That honor usually went to one of the popular kids, the cheerleaders or student council officers. The nominees for prom queen are Sarah Chin, Jennifer Walsh, Madison Crawford, Ashley Peterson, and Maria Santos. Madison felt Kevin squeeze her hand as their names were called to stand on the small stage. She smiled and waved, her tiara catching the light, feeling slightly embarrassed but also thrilled to be included. "We'll announce the winners at midnight," Principal Morrison said. "Until then, keep dancing." Madison returned to Kevin's side, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Can you believe I'm actually nominated?" "I can," Kevin said, spinning her around as the next song began. "You're the most beautiful girl here." At 10:45, Madison began to feel warm in the crowded gymnasium. The dancing, the excitement, the heavy dress, it was all catching up with her. "I'm going to get some air," she told Kevin, who was talking to some friends by the punch table. "Want me to come with you?" "No, stay here. I'll just be a few minutes." That was the last conversation anyone remembered having with Madison Crawford. The gymnasium had 3 exits: the main doors that led to the parking lot, a side door that opened to the courtyard between the gym and the main school building, and an emergency exit at the back that was supposed to be locked during events. No one saw Madison leave through any of them. Kevin Torres was the first to notice she was missing. At 11:15, when he'd been looking for her for nearly half an hour, he approached Sarah Chen with growing concern. "Have you seen Maddie? She said she was getting air, but that was like 30 minutes ago." Sarah frowned. "No, I thought she was with you." "Did you check the bathroom?" They checked the girls' bathroom together, Sarah going inside while Kevin waited in the hallway. Empty. They checked the courtyard, walking around the entire perimeter of the school building. Nothing. "Maybe she went to her car?" Sarah suggested, though it seemed unlikely. Madison wasn't the type to leave without saying goodbye, especially not on prom night. They found Kevin's borrowed sedan in the parking lot, doors locked, no sign of Madison. Kevin felt his stomach drop as he peered through the windows, hoping to see her sitting inside, maybe feeling sick or needing a quiet moment. "This isn't like her," he said, his voice tight with worry. By 11:45, they had enlisted a dozen of their friends in the search. They checked every classroom that was unlocked, every hallway, every possible place Madison might have gone for some privacy or fresh air. Nothing. At midnight, Principal Morrison took the microphone to announce the prom king and queen. This year's prom king is Jake Matthews. The gymnasium erupted in cheers as Jake stepped forward to accept his crown. And this year's prom queen is Madison Crawford. The cheering faltered as people looked around, realizing Madison wasn't there to accept her crown. Principal Morrison scanned the crowd, his expression shifting from celebration to confusion. "Madison Crawford? Is Madison here?" Sarah Chin stepped forward, her face pale. "Mr. Morrison, we can't find her. She's been missing for over an hour." What happened next would be remembered by everyone in attendance for the rest of their lives. The music stopped, the disco ball continued its silent rotation, and the realization settled over the room that something was terribly wrong. Principal Morrison immediately called the Millbrook Police Department. Within 20 minutes, the gymnasium was divided into groups, students being interviewed by officers, parents being called, and a systematic search of the entire school building beginning. Madison's parents arrived at 12:45 a.m., Catherine Crawford still in her pajamas and robe, Robert Crawford's face grim with fear. They had been asleep when the phone rang, never imagining their daughter's perfect night could turn into their worst nightmare. "She wouldn't just leave," Catherine kept repeating to anyone who would listen. "Madison isn't rebellious. She wouldn't run off with some boy or play a prank. Something happened to her." The initial search turned up nothing. Madison's purse was found on the table where she and Kevin had been sitting. Her car keys, lip gloss, and $40 in cash still inside. Her corsage was missing, though no one remembered whether she'd been wearing it when she went outside. Kevin Torres was questioned extensively, as were Madison's closest friends. Everyone told the same story. Madison had felt warm, gone outside for air, and simply vanished. The last confirmed sighting was at 10:47 p.m., captured by the school's photographer who had been taking candid shots throughout the evening. The photo showed Madison by the punch table, laughing at something Sarah had said, her tiara sparkling, her blue dress radiant under the gymnasium lights. She looked happy. She looked safe. She looked like a girl with her whole life ahead of her. The search for Madison Crawford began at dawn on May 16, 1999, and quickly became the largest missing person investigation in Millbrook's history. Police officers, volunteer firefighters, and hundreds of community members combed every inch of the town and surrounding forest, Detective Ray Sullivan, a 20-year veteran of the county sheriff's office, took lead on the case. He'd worked missing person cases before, but nothing involving someone as young as Madison, and nothing that had captured the town's attention so completely. "We're treating this as a possible abduction," he told reporters at the first press conference. Madison Crawford was a responsible young woman with no history of running away or risky behavior. "We're asking anyone with information to come forward immediately." The search focused on three main areas: the school grounds and surrounding neighborhoods, the route Madison would have taken to drive home, and Millbrook Forest, a 5,000-acre tract of woods that bordered the town on two sides. Millbrook Forest was particularly challenging to search. Dense with oak, maple, and pine trees, crossed by old logging roads that hadn't been maintained in decades, it offered countless places where someone could hide, or be hidden. "If she went into those woods," Sullivan told his team privately, "we might never find her." Dog teams tracked Madison's scent from the gymnasium to the parking lot, then lost it completely. It was as if she had simply evaporated into the spring air. The investigation revealed nothing alarming about Madison's personal life. She was a B+ student planning to attend the state university in the fall to study elementary education. She had a close relationship with her parents, a steady boyfriend, and a tight-knit group of friends. No drugs, no secret relationships, no family problems that might explain a sudden disappearance. She was just a normal 17-year-old girl, her mother told Detective Sullivan through tears. She was excited about prom, excited about graduation, excited about college. She had everything to live for. Kevin Torres was investigated thoroughly, as dating partners always were in missing person cases. His alibi was solid. Dozens of witnesses had seen him in the gymnasium throughout the time Madison was presumably outside. Polygraph tests showed no deception. Phone records revealed no unusual calls or messages. "Kevin's devastated," Sarah Chin told investigators. "He really loved her. He's been calling me every day asking if we've heard anything, if there's anything he can do to help." As days turned into weeks, the search expanded. State police brought in additional resources. The FBI opened a file, though they didn't classify it as a kidnapping without evidence of a crime. Psychics called with visions. Reporters from larger cities arrived to cover the story of the vanished prom queen. But no trace of Madison Crawford was found. Her parents never gave up hope. Catherine Crawford started a support group for families of missing persons. Robert Crawford took early retirement from the paper mill to dedicate himself to the search. They printed thousands of flyers with Madison's photo, the beautiful girl in the blue dress, smiling beside the punch bowl, tiara sparkling, captured in what would be the last moment of her documented existence. The case went cold after 6 months. Detective Sullivan kept it on his active desk until he retired in 2010, never closing it, never stopping his belief that somewhere out there, Madison Crawford was waiting to be found. Millbrook had changed in the decades since Madison Crawford's disappearance, but not much. The paper mill had closed in 2008, taking most of the good jobs with it. Many young people left for larger cities. The high school graduating classes got smaller each year. But Madison's story never faded. Her senior portrait still hung in the school's main hallway, part of a memorial display for students who had died or gone missing. Every May, on the anniversary of prom night, someone left flowers beneath her photo. Detective Ray Sullivan had passed away in 2018, taking his memories and theories with him. The case file sat in a box in the county sheriff's office, officially cold but never officially closed. It was a hiker named Tom Bradley who made the discovery that changed everything. Tom was 34, a software developer from Portland who had moved to Millbrook in 2023 during the pandemic, drawn by cheap real estate and the promise of remote work in a quiet town. He'd taken up hiking as a way to explore his new surroundings and had become familiar with most of the trails in Millbrook Forest. On the morning of March 12, 2025, Tom decided to explore a section of the forest he'd never visited before. A remote area about 4 miles from the main trailheads, accessible only by an old logging road that was barely passable even with a 4-wheel drive vehicle. The woods were different here. Older. The trees grew closer together, their canopy so thick that little sunlight reached the forest floor. It was the kind of place that felt primordial, untouched by modern life. Tom was following what appeared to be a game trail when he saw something that stopped him in his tracks. Hanging from a low branch of an ancient oak tree, about 7 feet off the ground, was a dress. Not the tattered remnants of fabric you might expect to find in the woods after years of weather and wildlife. This was a complete, intact dress that looked like it had just come from a dry cleaner. Blue silk that shimmered even in the filtered forest light, with crystals along the bodice that caught what little sun penetrated the canopy. A prom dress. Tom approached slowly, his rational mind rejecting what his eyes were showing him. Dresses didn't survive in the forest for any length of time. Animals would tear them apart for nesting material. Weather would fade and rot the fabric. This dress looked like it had been hung there yesterday. As he got closer, he noticed more details that made his skin crawl. Pinned to the chest was a corsage, white roses that were somehow still fresh, still blooming, petals soft and perfectly formed. And there was something else. A small piece of paper pinned beneath the corsage, with writing in faded blue ink. "I'm still dancing." Tom's hands shook as he took out his phone to call 911. He didn't know the story of Madison Crawford. He'd moved to Millbrook long after she disappeared, but he knew he was looking at evidence in what had to be a serious crime. What he couldn't explain was why he felt like he was being watched from the shadows between the trees. Sheriff Maria Santos had been 10 years old when Madison Crawford disappeared. She remembered the fear that had gripped Millbrook, the way parents had suddenly become overprotective, the way prom had been canceled the following year out of respect. Now, at 36, she was Millbrook's first female sheriff and the one who had to make sense of Tom Bradley's impossible discovery. "How long has it been hanging there?" was her first question when she arrived at the scene with her deputy, Jake Matthews, the same Jake who had been crowned prom king on the night Madison vanished. "I don't know," Tom replied, his voice still unsteady. "But Sheriff, I hike these woods all the time. I've never seen anything like this before. And that dress, it looks brand new." Sheriff Santos studied the dress from every angle, taking photographs and notes. The fabric showed no signs of weathering. The corsage appeared fresh enough to have been made that morning. The note was written in what appeared to be a teenage girl's handwriting, though the blue ink had faded as if from age. "We need to get this to the state crime lab," she told Deputy Matthews. "And we need to canvass this entire area." The removal of the dress required careful documentation. Crime scene technicians photographed it from every angle before gently cutting the branch it hung from, preserving the entire display for analysis. When they lowered the dress, something fell from its folds, a small crystal tiara, the kind sold at mall jewelry stores. It hit the forest floor with a soft chime, crystals catching the light like tiny stars. Madison's tiara. The one she'd been wearing in the last photograph taken of her. Back at the sheriff's office, Santos pulled Madison's case file from storage. The box was thick with reports, witness statements, and photographs that hadn't been looked at in years. She spread everything across her desk, studying the crime scene photos from the gymnasium, the witness statements, and the final photograph of Madison by the punch table. The girl in the photo was wearing the same dress, the same tiara, that had been found in the forest 26 years later. But that should have been impossible. Santos called Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a forensic anthropologist at the State University, to examine the dress and corsage. The results came back 3 days later. "The dress is consistent with late 1990s manufacture," Dr. Walsh reported. "The fabric is silk, the construction is high quality, and the style matches what would have been fashionable for formal wear in 1999. What about the corsage? That's where it gets interesting. The roses are fresh, maybe 3 or 4 days old at most. But the type of rose, the way they're wired together, the style of the corsage itself, it's exactly how they would have done it in 1999. Modern florists use different techniques now." Santos felt a chill run up her spine. "So you're saying someone made a corsage using 1999 techniques with fresh flowers and pinned it to a dress that's been missing for 26 years? That's exactly what I'm saying. And Sheriff? There's something else. I found organic material embedded in the dress fabric. Pollen, plant fibers, that sort of thing. I'm having it analyzed, but preliminary results suggest this dress has been in forest environment for an extended period. Maybe decades. But it looks brand new." "I know. I can't explain that either." The analysis of the forest materials found on Madison's dress revealed something that made no scientific sense. The pollen and plant fibers were from species that had grown in Millbrook Forest, but not recently. This pollen is from oak trees that were cut down in the 1960s when they built the new highway, Dr. Walsh explained to Sheriff Santos over the phone. And these pine needles are from trees that were lost in a forest fire in 1987. This dress has somehow accumulated organic material from different decades of forest growth. Santos stared at the evidence laid out before her. Dr. Walsh, I need you to be very clear with me. Are you saying this dress has been in the forest since 1999, but somehow preserved itself for 26 years? I'm saying the evidence suggests that's impossible, but I can't think of any other explanation that fits the data. Santos decided to return to the discovery site with a larger team. If Madison's dress had been hanging in those woods for decades, maybe there were other clues that had been overlooked. The search team consisted of Santos, 2 deputies, a K-9 unit, and Dr. Walsh, who wanted to examine the immediate area for additional forensic evidence. They found the ancient oak tree easily enough. Tom Bradley had marked the location with GPS coordinates. But as they began a systematic search of the surrounding area, they discovered something that hadn't been visible during the initial investigation. About 50 yards from where the dress had been hanging, hidden beneath decades of fallen leaves and forest undergrowth, was a clearing. Not a natural clearing. This one was perfectly circular, about 20 feet across, and nothing grew within its boundaries. The soil composition is different here, Dr. Walsh observed, taking samples. It's almost like something has been preventing plant growth in this exact spot. In the center of the clearing they found a depression in the earth. Not deep, maybe 6 inches, but clearly artificial. And at the bottom of the depression, partially buried in dark soil, was something metallic. Deputy Matthews knelt down and carefully brushed away the dirt. What he uncovered made everyone step back in surprise. It was a crown. Not a costume jewelry tiara like the one they'd found with the dress, but an actual crown made of silver, with intricate engravings and what appeared to be genuine gemstones. But that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part was that it looked like it had just been polished. Sheriff, Dr. Walsh said quietly, I think we need to consider that this might not be a crime scene in any conventional sense. Santos looked around the circular clearing, at the ancient trees that surrounded it, at the crown that gleamed like new despite being buried in forest soil. For the first time since becoming sheriff, she felt completely out of her depth. What do you think it is? Dr. Walsh was quiet for a long moment, studying the clearing with the analytical eye of a scientist and the unease of someone confronting the impossible. I think, she said finally, that this forest has been keeping Madison Crawford's story alive in ways we don't understand. And I think that dress wasn't found by accident. As if summoned by her words, a sound echoed through the trees around them. Faint, musical, like laughter carried on the wind. It sounded like a young girl delighted by some secret joke. It sounded like someone having the time of her life at a dance that never ended. That night, Sheriff Santos couldn't sleep. She sat in her kitchen with Madison's case file spread across the table, studying every photograph, every witness statement, every detail that might explain what they'd found in the forest. At 2 a.m. her phone rang. Sheriff Santos? This is Tom Bradley. I'm sorry to call so late, but I'm at the forest. I came back to check something and you need to see this. Santos felt her stomach drop. Tom, what are you doing out there alone? That's potentially a crime scene. I know, but Sheriff, there's music coming from the clearing. And lights. Like someone's having a party. Santos grabbed her keys and badge, calling Deputy Matthews as she headed for her patrol car. They met Tom at the edge of the old logging road, and together the three of them hiked through the dark forest toward the clearing where Madison's dress had been found. As they got closer they could hear it too, music from the late 1990s, the kind of pop songs that would have been playing at a high school prom. And through the trees ahead, they could see a soft, warm light that pulsed gently like a disco ball. They reached the edge of the circular clearing and stopped in amazement. The depression in the center had filled with what looked like clear water, perfectly still and reflecting the starlight above. Around the edges of the clearing, dozens of white flowers had bloomed, the same type of roses that had been in Madison's corsage. They glowed with their own soft light, creating a natural dance floor in the middle of the ancient forest. And in the center, barely visible like a reflection in the still water, was the figure of a young girl in a blue prom dress. She was dancing alone, spinning slowly with her arms outstretched, her tiara catching the light from the glowing roses. She looked exactly as she had in the last photograph taken of her, 17 years old, radiant, happy. As they watched in stunned silence, she turned toward them and smiled. She raised one hand in a small wave as if greeting old friends. Then she mouthed a single word, "Thanks." The music grew louder for a moment, a slow dance song that would have been popular in 1999, and Madison Crawford spun one more time, her dress flaring out around her like water. Then the light faded, the music stopped, and the clearing returned to ordinary forest darkness. The water was gone. The flowers were gone. The only sound was the wind in the trees and their own rapid breathing. But lying in the exact center of where the pool had been was a single white rose, fresh and perfect, with a note tied to its stem. "Tell them I'm okay. Tell them I found my perfect night and it never has to end. Madison." Sheriff Santos never filed an official report about what they'd seen in the clearing. How could she? Who would believe that Madison Crawford had somehow found a way to keep dancing, to keep celebrating her perfect prom night in a place where time moved differently? Instead, she quietly closed the case file with a notation that new evidence suggested Madison had left town voluntarily and was living safely elsewhere under a new identity. It wasn't true exactly, but it wasn't false either. The Crawford family was told that Madison's dress had been found, suggesting she might still be alive somewhere. It gave Catherine and Robert Crawford the first peace they'd known in 26 years. Not closure exactly, but hope that their daughter was somehow okay. Tom Bradley continued hiking in Millbrook Forest, but he never returned to that particular clearing. Sometimes, on quiet spring evenings when the weather was perfect for outdoor dancing, he reported hearing faint music carried on the wind. The dress and tiara were returned to the Crawford family, who donated them to the high school's memorial display. Students would sometimes report that late at night, when the building was locked and empty, they could hear music coming from the gymnasium. Slow songs and pop hits from 1999, as if some eternal prom was still in session. Dr. Walsh published a paper on temporal anomalies in forensic evidence, which was largely ignored by the scientific community but became popular among paranormal researchers. And every May 15th, on the anniversary of that long-ago prom night, fresh white roses appear throughout Millbrook Forest. Hikers find them scattered along trails, tied to tree branches, floating in streams, always perfect, always fresh, always accompanied by the faint sound of a young girl's laughter echoing through the trees. Some say Madison Crawford never left Millbrook at all. She simply found a way to make her perfect night last forever, dancing in a place where the music never stops and prom queens never have to grow old. Others say she's still out there somewhere, living a life she chose, free from the expectations and limitations that had defined her 17 years in Millbrook. But everyone agrees on one thing: wherever Madison Crawford is now, she's dancing. And she's happy. And sometimes, on the most beautiful spring evenings when the air is soft and the stars are bright, you can still hear her music drifting through the forests of small towns everywhere. A reminder that some nights are too perfect to ever truly end. The story of Madison Crawford, the girl who disappeared from her prom and found her way to forever, continues to echo through the trees. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be celebrated.